I've thought about this model quite a lot over the many years, and I think there's a lot wrong with it. To be honest with you, it's not particularly logical in the sense that um, one thing follows logically from another to another. And how I think of this model is it's about the psychological level that people are thinking about it. So rather than being logical, it's psychological in my mind. But it says that we tend to think of things in defined ways, and there is a hierarchy to those ways. So the bottom of the hierarchy is we think about the world in which we live. We think about where it is that we are, the kind of context that we're in. The question, "Where am I?" is aimed at not just thinking about your geographical location, but also the culture, the politics, the emotional world you live in, the relationship world. But it's where you are. It's where you're situated. What am I doing? Kind of speaks for itself. It's what am I doing in this environment? What are the behaviours and actions that I'm taking and using? And as we go up the triangle, psychologically these things become increasingly significant. So how am I doing what I'm doing? So what are my capabilities? And you might think in there about my overall skill sets, also my potential capabilities. What is my potential for the future in developing capability? What skills and capabilities am I moving towards or moving away from? And then as we get higher still, things become increasingly significant to us. Beliefs and values give us meaning and structure in the way we organize our thinking. And as you know, people will fight and die for beliefs and values. They will absolutely stand by them as things of real importance to themselves. And above that is the very mysterious idea of who am I? Very hard to nail down what identity is. But one way I think of it is as being that kind of core mental energy, the thing that I recognize as myself right from earliest consciousness. And it also incorporates all the things below as part of myself. But there's something else. You and I can share beliefs and values, we can share skills and capabilities and so on, but we're still different, you know. And finally, there's that what's it all about? There's meaning. What's the bigger thing, if you like, of which I'm a part, and which gives my whole self some direction and purpose. So the way I think about this practically in coaching is just to be aware of the level that somebody is thinking, and if, for example, they're thinking purely about what they're doing in a particular context, I might say, "And what does this mean to you?" I might ask a question at a different logical or psychological level, just to give them the option of thinking in a different way about the issue that they're contemplating, and to bring more of them potentially into the thinking process.
Mm. I've heard that as a coach, one doesn't use the word why or the question why so much. So on that belief and values, what is a way to get into that, or what's an entry point within a
Yeah, I
coaching
mean,
conversation to
that's a
get
good
people
spot, and
thinking there?
I might query that word myself actually. Um, why am I doing it? I think I might reframe as what is important and significant about what I'm
Mm. Mhm.
doing, or what is important and significant about this particular issue to me.
Yeah. And it sounds like wherever the conversation starts off in your head, if you've got this model, you can think about what level the client is talking at, and
That's
you
it.
can then perhaps suggest or invite them to look at a different level. Is there a
Yeah,
particular best order in which to do that? Are you directing them towards that? If you're up for and they're up for transformational
I
coaching,
don't think there's
are
a
you sort
particular.
of ascending the mountain peak here?
Yeah, I don't think there's a particular order. I think
Mm.
back to very basics. We're following the client's agenda,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean that we need to stay with it as it's currently presented. So they may think about. I mean, I did coach a client last week who had moved to a different organization with a very
Hmm.
different culture, very different beliefs and values in place.
Hmm.
And she was really questioning her identity in that organization. So she started off high
Hmm.
in on this model. But in the end, we came down to what could she do
Hmm.
about it in terms of what relationships could she nurture, what alliances could she seek to create, what challenges could she offer to the organization itself, how could she behave differently. So we took it from one high level down to
Mm.
another, but that was just the course of that conversation,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So it could go in any direction. I think one thing to bear in mind would be a change at any of these levels will affect all the others in some,
Yes. Yeah.
you know.
So it's like a sort of reverse Jenga. It's not just the ones at the bottom that will affect it. It's also the ones at the top that
Exactly
will
so.
have an impact elsewhere. I'm also
Exactly.
struck by the craft of coaching. To be not just to follow a plan and do it right. We'll do this one, then that one, then this one, then that one. You're also adept at going between the levels as a coach.
Yeah.
That strikes me as something that takes time to learn and time to practice.
Well, yeah, and but it's worth it, it is worth it because it gives you more flexibility and more possibility in the way that you coach. And again, I don't take this as being an absolute blueprint for the way that everybody operates. I just take it as an idea that might be helpful
Mm,
in some context. And indeed, it was in that particular piece of coaching.
mm,
Take her out of this kind of theoretical musing almost about
mhm.
values and beliefs into what could she practically affect
Yeah.
herself in her behavior. Um, so, but that actually had um, an impact on her beliefs and values and her sense of self. She had lost
Mhm,
a bit of agency.
mhm,
She sort of started to think there's nothing she could do about it, and therefore, at some level, she was helpless in
mm.
the situation. But by taking it down some levels, we were able to say, look, there are things you can influence, and that had some knock-on effect on her belief about herself in that context, in that environment.